The music didn't stop, but it faltered. A violin note trembled off-key just long enough for 200 guests to fall silent. My cheek stung. The taste of blood was sudden, sharp, metallic. Somewhere behind me, champagne flutes clinked against the marble floor. I didn't move. Not at first. My name is Elena Harper. I'm 30 years old. And 5 seconds ago, my father, Richard Harper, retired Marine and king of family pride, slapped me across the face at my brother's wedding. "You selfish little girl," he hissed, his breath hot with bourbon and rage. After everything we've done for you, I turned to face him, feeling the slow swell forming on my lip. My mother, Marlene, had gone pale, her hands trembling, not out of concern for me, but for the scene we were making. She glanced sideways toward the head table where the photographers had frozen in place. I didn't bother answering him. I just looked past him over his shoulder to the reason we were here. My brother Nathan Harper, still in his tailored tux, seated beside his new wife, Callie. He didn't rise, didn't flinch. He was smirking. Of course he was. Minutes earlier, they had cornered me by the dessert table, my parents. Told me to hand over the penthouse. "You're just one person," Elena Marlene had said, arranging a tray of cupcakes like it was any other day. "Nathan and Callie need a place to build their life. Be reasonable." Reasonable. That's what they always called it when they took from me and gave to him. I told them no. Calmly, directly. I bought that place with my own money. I live there. Nathan and Callie can find something on their own. And now this. His handprint blooming across my face, and my mother still more worried about what the neighbors might say. I blinked once, then smiled, not out of grace or defiance, but out of clarity. "You'll regret this," I said loud enough for the head table to hear. "All of you will." Then I turned and walked out of the ballroom. My heels echoed like a gavel on tile, and nobody followed me. The cold hit me as I stepped outside, but I didn't shiver. I kept walking. Past the valets, past the floral arch my mother obsessed over for weeks, past the guests pretending not to look. My hands were steady, but something in me had shifted. Not broken, just settled. When I was 24, I started saving for that penthouse. 60-hour work weeks, no vacations, night shifts, weekends. I wrote back-end code for banks, then freelanced on the side building billing systems no one wanted to learn, but everyone wanted to own. I worked out of a tiny cafe on 5th called Juniper and Black long wooden tables, a view of the harbor, and a barista named Mark, who never asked questions. That cafe became my refuge, my anchor. I made my down payment 3 years later. No help from anyone. Not from my father, who said I should be investing in a future with a man. Not from my mother, who called the place too cold, too modern, too far from the family. I moved in alone, furnished every corner with purpose. That penthouse was the first space that was truly mine. And Nathan. My brother had bounced through 5 business ideas by then. The last one involved drones and coffee delivery. The one before that, NFTs for dogs, I think. My parents bailed him out each time, quietly, relentlessly. He lived rent-free in a condo they owned, called himself Between Ventures, but somehow I was the one being selfish. They never noticed when I stopped showing up on holidays, when my texts turned one word short, when I politely turned down every Sunday dinner, every call that started with "we were thinking" and ended with "Nathan could use your help." They thought I was quiet because I had nothing to say. Truth is, I stayed quiet because I knew one day I'd need them to forget how much I'd learned while they weren't looking. I didn't drive home. The penthouse felt too loud with memory, too exposed. I couldn't face the silence it would offer me tonight. Instead, I took a left at the waterfront and pulled into the gravel lot behind Juniper and Black. The cafe was quiet this late, almost closing. A single bulb above the counter cast a golden hue over polished wood, and there was Mark drying glasses with the same quiet rhythm he always kept. Mid-30s, patient-eyed, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He looked up as I entered, and for a second his face changed. Not surprise, concern. "You okay?" he asked, already reaching for the mug he always used for me. "My father slapped me," I said, walking slowly to my usual table by the window. "At my brother's wedding, because I wouldn't give them my penthouse." Mark didn't say anything at first. He just placed the mug down black coffee, 2 sugars, then added a chocolate muffin beside it. On the house, he said. You look like you need it. I sat there a long while staring out at the water. The reflection of the harbor lights flickered like someone was shaking the surface, and for the first time since the ballroom, my chest cracked open. But I didn't cry from hurt. I cried because I was furious. For years, I had done everything right, earned my place, asked for nothing. And this was my reward, being smacked in public because I refused to hand over what I built. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an asset. Somewhere between the coffee cooling in front of me and the muffin untouched beside it, a new clarity settled. If they could take from me that easily, what would they try next? I opened my laptop. My hands didn't shake, and in the soft hum of the cafe, I began to plan. The next morning, the doorman called before I'd finished my coffee. Ms. Harper, your parents are here. They weren't announced. Of course they weren't. I dressed with care, slacks, dark blouse hair pulled back. Clean lines, quiet power. When I opened the door to meet them in the hallway, my father was already pacing, jaw clenched. Richard Harper, former sergeant, still acting like the world owed him obedience. Where are you going? My mother asked, voice sharp beneath her pearls. We need to talk about last night. Work? I replied, locking the door behind me. Some of us actually have jobs. My father stepped in close, grabbing my arm. Don't you take that tone. After your behavior yesterday, I pulled away calm as glass. Touch me again and I'll call security. He hesitated. I didn't. There are cameras, you know, at the country club. High resolution, multiple angles. That stopped him. Marlene, usually so poised, paled visibly. You wouldn't try me. I turned toward the elevator. Oh, and change the locks if you want. It won't matter. Everything valuable is already in secure storage. As the doors slid shut between us, I watched them blink, not angry, confused. Like they were just now realizing I wasn't the same girl they used to corner in the kitchen and guilt into giving up weekends' money silence. This time, they didn't follow. And that was their first mistake. I didn't answer their calls. Not that day. Not the day after. At first, the messages were predictable. My mother tried guilt. Elena, come back inside. You're embarrassing the family. Then Nathan, my brother, weighed in. Don't be dramatic, sis. We can talk about this like adults. And then Callie. He deserves that penthouse more than you. He's starting a family. I read each message once, then muted the thread and never replied. Instead, I drove back to Juniper and Black, ordered the same coffee, and claimed my usual seat. Mark gave me a silent nod. He didn't ask questions this time, just brought over my drink and left me to my screen. That afternoon, I opened 3 tabs, one for my lawyer, one for my financial advisor, one for a real estate listing I'd bookmarked 6 months ago but never pursued, a luxury oceanfront apartment complex called Hollow Shore Residences. It had been Nathan and Callie's latest obsession. They'd toured it in April, raved about the glass balconies and heated floors. They couldn't afford it, of course, but they'd been angling to rent one of the corner units, hoping my parents would co-sign. Now, I was making an offer on the entire building. By sunset, I'd submitted a formal bid backed by years of savings and 2 investment portfolios they didn't even know I had. That night, I pushed a major code update to a private GitHub repo, a property management platform I'd been quietly building in my spare time. The same idea Nathan once tried to borrow for his failed startup. By the time I closed my laptop, phase 1 was complete. They thought I was spiraling, that I'd come crawling back. But I wasn't unraveling. I was constructing, not revenge, not chaos, a boundary, made of brick fiber cable and legally binding contracts. They had wanted my home. I was about to show them what I really owned. 10 days passed in silence. Not true silence, there were still messages, still calls from blocked numbers and mutual friends with nervous voices. Nathan sent a cousin to check in. Callie posted vague jabs on social media about entitled people who don't support family. But I didn't respond. I was busy. By then, the offer on Hollow Shore Residences had been accepted. The paperwork was moving. My lawyer, Rachel Myers, efficient as ever, had flagged every clause. The complex would be mine within the month. But that wasn't the part that kept me up at night. The real rot was deeper. Years ago, when Nathan was launching his now-defunct crypto platform Oryx, he came to me for technical advice. He said he needed someone to look over his architecture. I offered help. I reviewed his documents, shared a few of my own interface mock-ups, assuming he just needed inspiration. He took them, rebranded them, built a front-facing system that was 80% my original code, untested, unsecure, and irresponsibly modified. When Oryx collapsed spectacularly last year, he claimed market volatility. But now that I'd gained access to a few of his old servers, he never changed his admin passwords, 'cause of course he didn't. I found more than bad coding. I found records, shell corporations, fake consulting invoices, large transfers to a familiar business name, Harper & Associates LLC, my father's side business. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd laundered investor money through my family's name. I called Rachel. If I file this with the SEC, it'll bring them both down. She was quiet a moment. Do you want that? I want them to stop. I want them to understand I'm not afraid of them anymore. Then I sent one more email. To my mother. Subject line. We should talk. She showed up the next morning, Marlene Harper pearls tight at the throat face, drawn tighter. She tried to open with tears. I let her. But when I turned my laptop toward her and showed her the financial records, she stopped mid-sentence. You don't understand. No, I said, voice steady. You don't. Fraud isn't a mistake, and neither is raising a son who thinks stealing from family is strategy. Her hands trembled in her lap. I closed the laptop. We were just getting started. Marlene sat still for a long time. The tears had stopped. The softness she walked in with motherly grief, wounded dignity had vanished. What remained was calculation. She wasn't here to heal. She was here to contain. What do you want, Elena? She asked finally. Her voice was tight, not broken, controlled. I want peace, I said. No more calls, no more flying monkeys, no more social media updates from Callie about how I abandoned the family. She blinked. The penthouse is mine. Legally, morally, factually. It's off limits. My finances, my work, my future off limits. And if we don't agree to that, I looked at her, then really looked. At the woman who had always chosen silence over truth etiquette, over protection. Who taught me that being a daughter meant knowing when to give up what you loved quietly with a smile. I gave her none of that now. I have documents that show Dad's involvement in Nathan's fraud. I have server logs, payment trails, names, screenshots, and I have video of him slapping me in a public venue with witnesses. You'd destroy your own family, she whispered. No, I said. You did that. When you told me to give up my home. When Dad raised his hand. When Nathan watched and smiled. Her face crumpled just slightly, like something inside her had shifted but not enough to reach her mouth. I closed the laptop gently. The sound echoed more than I expected. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable, I said, standing. Just distance, just silence. She didn't respond, just rose, gathered her purse, and walked out. I stood by the window for a long time after, watched her disappear into a black sedan. No slammed doors, no shouted names. Only quiet, and for once, it belonged to me. 1 week passed, then 2. I didn't hear from Marlene. Richard didn't call. Nathan didn't post. But the silence wasn't peace. It was pressure building behind a dam. The first crack came in an email from my real estate agent. Subject eviction notice processed. Unit 14C. Nathan and Callie had stopped paying rent. 2 months delinquent. Ignored notices. Blamed a miscommunication with the leasing office. What they didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that I was the new owner. The name on their final notice was mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't interfere. I let the process unfold the way it was designed to. Quiet, legal, permanent. They moved out in silence. No Instagram photos, no long goodbye. Just one text from Nathan the night they left. Mom told me what you're doing. You can't prove anything. I stared at the message for a while. Then attached a screenshot server logs bearing his full name, timestamped file access account IDs. I sent it without a word. His reply came minutes later. What do you want? I answered in 3 distance. Total distance. No more demands. No more guilt trips disguised as family dinners. No more pretending we were something we hadn't been in years. He tried one last time. You've changed. I looked at the message, then wrote, No. I just stopped pretending. Then I silenced the thread and archived the conversation. That night, I walked out onto the penthouse balcony. The city lights were soft, almost kind. I thought of how many years I'd spent trying to be good, useful enough. Now, I didn't need to be anything but free. They had tried to take my home and ended up losing their own. It was a Tuesday evening when the knock came. Not urgent, not angry, just hesitant. I checked the security camera. Richard Harper standing alone in the hallway, shoulders squared like habit, but his hands kept adjusting his jacket like he didn't know what to do with them. I could have ignored it. But curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He looked older than I remembered. His jaw wasn't set like usual. His eyes didn't scan the room like he owned it. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking. I said nothing, but I didn't close the door either. They're moving back in with us, he said finally. Nathan and Callie. Couldn't keep the apartment. I know, I replied, voice flat. I own the building. He blinked as if the sentence didn't compute. Then something behind his eyes gave way. You, he said quietly. But how? Because I'm good at what I do, Dad. I always was. You just never noticed. He looked down. The silence between us stretched, not hostile, not awkward, just real. Your mother misses you. We all do. No, I said. You miss having someone to push around, someone to sacrifice for Nathan. That person doesn't live here anymore. He nodded slowly. I was wrong, he said, about a lot of things. The slap, the way we treated you, covering for Nathan. I've lost everything because of it. It was true. After I showed Marlene what I had, Richard had stepped down from his company's board. The whispers in his circles had started, his clean record no longer clean. I didn't release anything I said. The threat was enough. He looked up, then really looked. You haven't lost everything I added. You still have your golden child. Isn't that what matters? He exhaled, shaky. We made mistakes. No, I said. You made choices. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Your mother wanted you to have this. It's an invitation, her birthday dinner. I took it but didn't open it. I'll think about it. And I closed the door. Not loud, not fast, but with finality. I held the envelope for 3 days before I opened it. No note. Just cream cardstock with my mother's handwriting, delicate cursive that always looked more like a performance than a signature. Please join us for Marlene Harper's 63rd birthday dinner. Family only. Family. I almost laughed, but I didn't throw it away. The night of the dinner, I arrived late. 15 minutes after everyone had already been seated. I wore black, not dramatic, not mourning, just neutral. Present, but untouchable. Nathan and Callie sat in the far corner, their clothes once designer, now department store simple. She didn't meet my eye. He barely looked up. My father, Richard, stayed sober. He nodded when I entered nothing more. My mother smiled too wide too quickly, as if the room might shatter if I didn't play along. But I didn't perform. I observed. No one asked me questions. No one gave me orders. And when I left early quietly without fanfare, no one followed me. A few months later, I hosted a dinner of my own. It wasn't in their home. It wasn't family only. It was on my balcony, my penthouse. There was wine, laughter, the sharp scent of roasted garlic and soft jazz playing low in the background. Mark came, of course. So did Rachel, my lawyer, and Jenna, the real estate agent who helped me secure the building. People who never expected me to give up pieces of myself just to earn space at their table. We toasted as the city lit up beneath us. To Elena, Mark said, raising his glass, who turned a slap into an empire. I smiled, not out of victory, but out of peace. Not silence, not surrender. Choice. They tried to take my home, but instead they gave me my freedom.